Have you been looking for that perfect relationship in your life? Perhaps you want to manifest your dream job or start your own business, but you're wondering when the right moment is or how you're going to put it all together. Well, I'm here with manifestation expert and energy healer, Carolin Hauser. Carolin, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, why is it so hard for some of us to bring it all together and have it all in our lives?
That's a really good question, because most people, they work on themselves and they try really hard and they come up with these resolutions and conscious ways of wanting to change, and then we always end up in the same place, it seems, right? And so what I found in my own life is the reason why that is that actually the way we manifest or create our lives is mostly by our unconscious commitments. So what we believe, the old saying of whatever you believe you will achieve is true. Problem is though that most of the stuff we believe we aren't even conscious of because it's in our subconscious.
So how do we know if we have something inside our subconscious that is actually holding us back from having what we really want?
It's really easy, because if you look at your life, if basically you create what you're believing in your subconscious or conscious. And so if you're looking at your life, anything that you have created based on what you believe. So in a very simple way, you just really have to be honest with yourself and take a good look. And even if there's stuff that you don't like, right? Even if you have been wanting to have the love of your life forever, like I've been wanting it for 20 years, for example, to just take a really good look and say, well, based on what I'm seeing out picturing in my life, I must hold a belief that it's not possible for me, or that I don't believe it, or don't deserve it, or so basically looking at your results, looking at things that are in your life, the circumstances, that will tell you what you're subconsciously believing and holding.
So what are some of the messages that we hold that get in our way? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, like I don't deserve to have that relationship that I really want. Maybe I don't deserve to make money. I don't deserve to have a successful business. What kind of messages are out there, and where do they come from?
Yeah, it's actually not so much like a literal verbal message. It's when we are born, we are this perfect whole being, bundle of light, connected, not doubting that there's anything wrong with us. And actually up until the age of 7, we don't have a conscious reasoning faculty. So anything that we're around basically gets unfiltered into our subconscious. So that's what the programming is. So let's say as a child, you grow up in circumstances that are less than ideal, which most of us do, right? Like a stable environment, unstable environment, abusive households, anything that's less than ideal will program you. And the way it works, like different people will draw different conclusions. So we make decisions based on it. So let's say, your mom is somebody who went to work when you were born, or right after you were born. She might love you, right? But because she's not there, you might draw the conclusion she doesn't love me. Right? So that's how the belief gets formed, based on kind of the experiences that you're having, more than an actual message that somebody is saying to you. Although, a lot of people are also around people that say awful things to you, but the programming much more happens just by assimilation.
So how does that work? So it happens, say you're 5 years old and you develop a belief, and now you're 30. What is the role of that belief?
Originally, or I believe originally, the reason why we have the structure is to keep us safe, like our ego structure, right? It keeps us safe. It makes sure that we survive. As a newborn, our main interest, unconsciously again, is to survive, right? Because we're really helpless. And so in the beginning, a lot of these beliefs that we create really help us either emotionally survive or physically, literally physically survive. But then when you're 35, you have your faculties are more developed, your resources are more developed. You really don't need that protective mechanism anymore, but because it's subconscious, you keep doing it.
So your work is as an expert in family constellations. Mm-hmm. What are family constellations?
To really understand, you have to experience it, but the best I can describe it is essentially, when we talk about these subconscious beliefs, they're not words, they're more like pictures that we're holding. And I'm pointing here because really the subconscious is like our original reptile brain, so it's back here. So we're holding these imprints or images back here. And what the constellation work does it first of all helps you basically make what you believe visible. It also shows you where it came from. And once you become aware of something, it's in your conscious mind. So the programming is basically almost like eradicated, right? And then what the constellation also does, so let's say you have an unhealthy picture, you know, because your mom wasn't there, or your dad left early, or, you know, there was alcoholism in your family, whatever it was, you know, you lost maybe a sibling early, and it was kind of shoved under the carpet. So the unhealthy picture in the constellation work gets actually replaced with the healthy picture. So it's not only eradicated, but you're actually getting the healthy picture. And with that, you're able to really create a much better outcome for your life and your relationships.
So what is the role of a healthy picture versus an unhealthy picture in what we can attract and manifest in our life?
Since we literally create and manifest based on what we're holding, the role of the picture is literally helping you attract what you want, right? So if it's a negative picture, you attract the negative circumstances, people, relationships. If you have a positive picture, healthy picture of, you know, a picture of a healthy relationship, you'll attract and create that. So it's like a magnet, right? It works like a magnet.
It sounds really simple. Is it simple?
No, it's not. It is simple when you know how to do, and literally constellations are the only work that I know how to do this exchange. There is ways to consciously change your subconscious, but you have to do a lot of repetition. You have to create results and really show yourself that other things are possible. So it takes a lot of work. So in that way, you know, that's possible. But to do it in that easy way, the constellations are really the only way that I know, because, you know, the subconscious is not called the subconscious for a reason. It's the subconscious because we don't have conscious access to it. Right? It's like it's a conundrum.
So we were talking before we came on the studio today about buried desires. Mm-hmm. What are buried desires?
Well, in general, also how we create our lives is by either the subconscious programming or our desires. Now, most people, because of the programming again, because of how they were treated as children, don't allow themselves to want what they want. And so it's really hard to create anything when you're not connected to that, you know, to that deep, has not so much to do with sexual desire, although it lives in your heart and body, just like a deep knowing that something is right for you. And so it's very hard to manifest anything if you don't have that. And as I said, most people just have decided, because it's, you know, probably a lot of you watching have tried to achieve something for a long time and it's just not happening. Mm-hmm. So you just give up on your dreams basically, right? And you just let that desire go. And there's no way that you can have what you want if you don't do the work to reconnect it. So one of my mentors always says, you know, you can't teach somebody desire. It's everybody's responsibility to dig it out and do the work to, you know, sometimes there's lots of layers of pain because you have given up on it for so long, or people have told you you can't have it, and you've really bought into that story. I mean, I know with myself, you know, I've always wanted this dream relationship, and then people also, you know, in the self-help space, people say, well, you know, there is no fairy tale, and you have to find yourself and just be happy with your one. And I'm like, no, I know he's out there. I know I'm not crazy, but then, well, maybe he's not. And just like, I was vacillating. That's why it took so long, until I literally said, no, you know, I feel it, I want it, I know it's there. And then he came within 24 hours, right?
So Carolin, there are people out there who've been working on a relationship for a really long time. You know, they've done the vision boards, they've written the letter, they've done all the exercises to attract their soulmate, but it's still not working. How can you explain that?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the subconscious, right? Because everything that you've most likely done, you have done on a conscious level, right? But if literally you have been programmed for not being worthy for love, or like I was actually programmed for always being in a space where I wanted love and didn't get it, right? So, and I recreated that throughout my whole adult life. I was committed to creating situations where I was experiencing this not being loved and wanting the love more than actually having love. So that's, you know, you have to think about it, it's crazy. But that's the way it is. So, so the reason why is, again, the subconscious, you know. and basically the magnet that you're holding. Because the law of attraction works, but it goes into resonance with what your strongest belief is, and the conscious mind is, 10% of really our brain power. We don't know really yet, but it's a small amount.
So you are the author of a book, Blossom. Tell us a little bit about your book.
My own story is that I experienced childhood sexual abuse, and for me, a lot of my healing came through that journey. And so the book is called Blossom: Your 7-Step Journey to Healing Childhood Sexual Abuse and Creating Your Dream Life. I know it's a mouthful, but that's what it's about. And for me, part of the wake up came. So I had eating disorders for all my teenage years, and a lot of depression, and nothing helped. And I was looking outside of myself for help. And going to talk therapy, for example. And while it was good that I had somebody at least that I could talk to, it didn't really change the results. It didn't, the eating disorders didn't go away. I was still very alone, very dysfunctional, and all of that. And so one of the realizations was that in order for me to heal, I actually had to do it myself. And also it had a lot to do with healing the sexual part, because it's not so much about just sexuality, but what I believe and what I've seen over and over again is that we really need to be in the here and now in order to be present, feel our desires, and really, have that strong vibrational beam to attract what we want. And in order to be present, you need to be in your body. And most people aren't, especially if you have experienced sexual trauma or any kind of abuse or traumatic experiences. You just you leave and you're not home. And so a lot of the focus in the book is helping people understand this and then help them work with their body so they can come back, enjoy themselves, because to me, the most blissful, the most pleasurable experience, and I believe we're all here, to have the most blissful and just yummy and connected feeling life that we can, comes when you're really connected to your sexual creative center and in your body and at home.
So how can you tell? Let's say you've disconnected from your body. How can you tell? What are some examples that might show up in your life that might be a hint that you are tuned out, that you're not present?
Yeah, so one of the major symptoms is that you spend most of your day or life up here, right? A lot of going in circles and obsessing and anxiety, being in the past, not being able to move on, feeling hurt and triggered by a lot of things, or always in the future, worrying about the future. So never being right now, right here, right? It's always somewhere else in your head. So literally, kind of like being up here. And then also physically, probably not really feeling much. And in general, not feeling much.
So what are some things that you can do just to get started? I mean, there's people watching right now and they're thinking, God, I can relate to that. I've had abuse in my life. Maybe it's emotional, maybe it's sexual. I know I'm not in my body. How can you start to move back in, even if that process is painful?
For me, it really had to do a lot with starting to live through my senses. So, very simple exercises, when you do the dishes, to feel the water on your hands, for example. Or, getting body work, and instead of just laying there, kind of, letting the person do its thing, like really feeling the warmth, really receiving the touch. If you are in a relationship, you could make conscious time and just say, let me just explore touch, without being sexual, but just to literally learn how to feel or sense. You use the body as a sensing organ, and you can do that with anything. You could be outside in a stinky city and fully smell the all the smog and everything. You could be at the beach and enjoy it as much, smelling the nice, fresh ocean air. So anything where you involve your senses other than eyesight, because we're already so focused on it anyways, but touch, smell, taste, yeah.
Carolin, so you've created a program called the Pleasure IQ. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, I was finding myself in a situation of basically the outpicturing my results were total lack bankrupt, chronic fatigue, adrenal burnout, not being able to get off the couch for like a month. And I had two small children. I still have children, but they were little. 16 months and 5 years old at that point. I couldn't take care of them. And I had no support. my husband at the time was working full time and I was home with them and just going, I can't do this. And I had already written the book, so I knew, that somehow there's something that I had to figure out to help myself. And what became really clear was that I needed to start putting myself first and basically pursue pleasure. So the original title of this program was The Pursuit of Pleasure. So I went on a pursuit of pleasure because I wanted to basically prove that if I radically lived like that, moment to moment, made decisions based on what would feel right again, like in my core, in my body, that my life would look very differently very soon. That's how this program was birthed.
So, and how does that translate to other people? I mean, when we hear the word pleasure, is it just sexual? Is it sensory? I mean, what do you mean by pleasure?
Yeah, to me, it means just like good feeling, right feeling, alive, joyous, yeah, it's the best I can describe it. So not just sexual, but the sexual piece is a big part of it because it's our life force is connected, our creativity, yeah.
Just having all that energy flowing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think that it's true for men, but also for women, that we get caught in a loop, in a pattern where we put everybody else first. We do whatever we can for our children. We help for also our aging parents, at a different phase in our life. We put our clients first. We do everything before we finally get to ourselves. And how important is it to recognize that is the opposite of what we need to be doing so that we can start to actually create the life that we want to live?
It's super important. It's number one priority. Hopefully you don't have to end up where I ended up. I obviously had to go that far. Mm-hmm. I don't wish that on anyone, right? So it's when I talk to people now, or my clients, that's the number one priority. It's like learning to do that and then putting things in place to make sure that happens.
I know you do a lot of work, especially online, with people who are either looking for a relationship or in a relationship, but they want to make that relationship more successful. But you also have created something that I think is really interesting. I love the way it sounds. The Blue Night Manifestation Circle. What is that?
Yeah, so the energy of the Blue Night is actually comes from the Mayan tradition, and it's a space in which you are safe to rediscover your dreams and then manifest them. So, and it's the energy I was born in the Mayan tradition. So it's basically the reason I created it is because I wanted to provide the sacred space where you can go deep, find out what those pictures are, replace them, and then really dig out the desires and dreams and create the life that you want, including that amazing relationship.
Energy medicine is something that has been around for a long time, but yet it's still new in the modern world. I mean, we hear about energy medicine, but we don't necessarily know what it means. You do a lot of energy work with family constellations. Can you explain energy medicine to us?
Okay. So everything is energy, right? And we all are beings that are made out of energy, and we have a certain vibration. And depending on what has happened in your life, you're either at a lower frequency, so if there's a lot of trauma, anger, grief, those are all kind of like, without being, being judgmental or, judgy, it's just a lower frequency. And again, you attract basically based on what you're vibrating at. So energy medicine basically helps you transmute that negative. It's almost like alchemy, right? Mm-hmm. And it's partly you do it, partly it's a co-creative process so that you can really get to a better and faster and higher vibrating frequency and then attract the better things in your life.
Sounds very fascinating.
It is.
And something that I think that we all can sense when we're at a lower vibe.
Yeah.
But I think what the challenge is how do we shift to get to that higher space where everything is what we want, where there's the bliss, where there is the happiness, and how do we make that connection? Yeah. Carolin Hauser, thank you so much for being here with us here on The Ripple Effect.
Thank you for having me.